Stadium Status.
Welcome back to episode 3 of Stadium Status. There's been a lot that's gone on in the sports world. We have the draft, we have the NBA playoffs, so we're going to jump right into it, starting with the NBA, whose first round is about to conclude. We're almost there, so Jack, take us away from here.
Yeah, so we're just going to kind of briefly go over our thoughts on a couple of the round 1 series, maybe some looking potentially into some round 2 series. And then later in the show, we'll talk about our thoughts on who could come out of the East and West. We'll talk about that more towards the end of the show. But for now, we'll start with the boring conference. Honestly, we'll start with the series that have had almost nothing of note in the East. Cleveland, Miami, 4-0 sweep. It was never close. Nobody thought Miami ever stood a chance. That Cleveland just played like Cleveland has all year and just dominated. I honestly don't have anything to say about the series. It was very boring, very straightforward. Cleveland 4.
Yeah, it was, I think, the most lopsided series in playoff history, actually. I think the point differential was the worst or up there in the top 5 of all time. So, I mean, the Cavs are definitely proving to people that maybe don't think they belong, but the Heat are also proving to people that they definitely did not belong in the playoffs to begin with. So it's still kind of hard. I guess we'll see in the next round when they face up against the Pacers, because it's a little bit better team, but we'll see from there.
So, as you just said, the Pacers are moving on to round 2. They played Milwaukee in the first round, and Giannis hasn't won a first-round playoff series since 2021, when they won a championship, which is kind of ridiculous for a top 3 player in the world if you really think about it. But this series had some taking nothing away from the Pacers, this series had some asterisks. The Dame didn't play in the first 1 or 2 games because of his blood clots, and then in Game 3, in Game 4 he tore his Achilles. So the game, while they did win 4-1, and I don't think Dame being fully healthy would have dramatically changed, I still think the Pacers probably win this, but it did add some fuel to the fire for Indiana just to close it out as quick as possible. Tyrese Halliburton played well. They played typical Pacer ball where nobody really stole the show. It was just kind of team-oriented, and now they have Cleveland in the second round, which will be an interesting series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's about a 70%, 75% chance that was the last time we see Giannis in a Bucks uniform. I mean, 3 straight first-round exits, one of which was to an 8 seed back against the Heat. But nonetheless, pretty embarrassing for a top 3 player in the world. And they haven't really done – I mean, they brought in Dame, which he's a good player, but he's getting up there in age. So he's not really a true, reliable guy that can be – especially with injuries, a reliable guy that can lead you on a playoff spurt. He hasn't proven to do that, and I just feel like Giannis wants to win. And I don't know. I don't think he'll go to a place like OKC because I don't think he's that kind of player. But I think he'll go somewhere with a better culture building around a superstar. And with the Pacers, I predicted them to win, of course. Mr. Jack did not. He picked the Bucks for some reason.
I did think Dame would be healthy, but after watching the series, that it just wasn't meant to be.
And a lot of people are discounting the Pacers. Tyrese Halliburton was voted the most overrated player in the league, but a lot of people are forgetting this team did go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They do have a NBA champion in Pascal Siakam and a pretty good player in Tyrese Halliburton. And this team is not different really than last year's team at all. So I think the matchup with the Cavs is going to be a lot closer than some people might think, but that's just me. But moving on to our next one, we have the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons, which just finished up, and the Knicks won in 6 off of a Marvin Bagley? Is that his name?
Malik Beasley.
Off of a Malik Beasley fumble, basically. But yeah, the series is the games are really good, but the Knicks they should have won on paper, and they ended up winning in the end against the Pistons team that's really young and had a really, really good season, but it was like a Cinderella season for them. Their Super Bowl was this Knicks series, so. Yeah, Knicks move on to play the Celtics in round 2.
Yeah, I think on paper the Knicks should have won the series in 5. But on the court, I actually think Detroit should have won the series. In Game 3, Tim Hardaway got fouled on what should have and they won, but they lost by 1. Yeah. So all he would have had to do is make 2 of his 3 free throws. He got fouled on a 3-point attempt as the clock expired. And Josh Hart fouled him. The NBA went back and looked at it. And it was a foul, and they said the refs missed the call. Should have won that game. And then last night, the Knicks, in the last 2 minutes, went on a 13-1 run to close the game. Detroit should have won that game, too. This should be Detroit in 6 if you look at on-court product. On paper, obviously, the Knicks should have won. However, on court, this should have been the Pistons, but I think that was just besides the ref thing is another pocket of information. It's just the product of a young team. It's the product of an inexperienced team in the playoffs. I don't think you'll see Detroit give up a 13-1 run like that in the playoffs again. I think this team is here to stay. I think they'll be competitive in the East for a couple years to come as long as they keep their core together for the most part. And yeah, I was frustrated because I wanted the Pistons to win for entertainment's sake. I was frustrated with the situation, but it's kind of just what comes with a young team sometimes. But as you said, they played the Celtics in the second round. Another very boring series. The Magic did steal a game from them, but this was never close. The Celtics are I think they're the best team in the league. Maybe besides the Thunder, a lot of people have them as the best team in the league, even though they had a worse record than Cleveland coming into the playoffs. But a healthy Celtics team is terrifying. You saw what a healthy Kristaps could do earlier at the end of the season when he played the Knicks, made 8 threes, was extremely clutch, and a healthy Celtics team is a terrifying team to play if you're the Knicks, if you're anybody in the league.
Yeah, for sure. The Magic showed that if you get physical with them, you can give them a little bit of trouble, but it was still a 4-1 series. Jason Tatum his ankle should be back to normal by the time the series rolls around, and a lot of people are calling on Tatum to unlock a new level in his game for this series or for this playoff run. And if he does that, I think they can win it without him going into like a Knicks superstar Anthony Edwards type performance. But even if he doesn't, if he does, nobody's going to beat him. If he doesn't, then maybe they lose in the finals, is what I think. I don't think the Cavs stand a chance. The Cavs are the only team I think in the East that stand a chance of beating them, and I don't think it's a very good chance. But yeah, the Celtics are definitely the most complete team in the East when healthy, and they're going to be scary moving forward. But moving on to the West, we'll start with the most boring matchup. OKC Memphis, clean sweep. This is probably the second biggest beatdown in NBA playoff history, and too bad John Morant got hurt because he had him figured out after game 2. He had him figured out, but always next year for Ja. But yeah, OKC looks to play either Denver or the Clippers in the next round, so we'll see how that goes. But what are your thoughts on it?
The only thoughts I have, I did not watch. I watched one game. I watched the game that was on Easter, maybe. I think I watched the game on Easter, and the 2 days later, I looked at the box score, and Memphis was down like 65. So it was just utter destruction from start to finish, and there's nothing of note about this series other than the Thunder look really good. The Thunder look deadly. The Thunder look scary. They beat down a decent team in Memphis. But their potential opponent is yet to be determined. As of the filming of this video, the Clippers won Game 6 last night in Los Angeles in the Intuit Dome. And this series has been ridiculous. We've seen game winners. We've seen defensive battles. We've seen
Fraud game winners for Aaron Gordon.
His hands were still in that basketball. But we've seen, last night Russell Westbrook blew a layup with a minute left that would have brought them within a possession, and he literally missed a breakaway layup again, second time in 2 weeks. This series has been, I think a lot of people picked this series to be one of the most entertaining. This and the Lakers series were the two that people were like, this is going to be an entertaining series in round 1, and so far it has proven to be such. I think we both picked the Clippers in this series, so yeah, this has been a very, very solid series all in all. And who do you think is gonna win Game 7? You have the best player in the world versus Kawhi and James Harden, are two of the hottest players in basketball right now.
Honestly, I think it's a toss-up, but I don't think it depends on Jokic. Jokic is going to have a good game regardless. I think it's all going to come down to Jamal Murray. And in Game 5, he went off and activated playoff Jamal after he got the bubble Jamal after the head. But
I saw a stat yesterday that showed the biggest playoff risers by statistics of all time, and Jamal Murray is quite literally 1.4 times the next number 2 is Rajon Rondo. He is it was a graph like this, and Rajon was here, and he was here. He's the biggest playoff riser in NBA history by a wide margin. It wouldn't shock me to see a Jamal Murray Game 7 where he just goes off for 45 points.
Yeah, if Jamal Murray has over, what do you think, 28?
28 was the number in my head.
If Jamal Murray has over 28 points, the Nuggets will win this game, barring some insane stat. But yeah, it's all going to come down to Jamal Murray for me because I feel like both sides are going to they're going to make their shots, and it's just going to come down to the players like Jamal and probably Jamal, and who do you think's the Clippers' most important player?
Zubac.
That's right, Zubac, yeah. Jamal and Zubac, whoever has a better game wins the series. Moving on to our next matchup, we have Jack's favorite, so I'll let him take it away from here.
Yeah, this series was ridiculously bittersweet for me because, as some people know, I'm a big LeBron fan on court, and I am a Timberwolves fan. So this was bittersweet. It was a like a lose-lose and a win-win. Either my favorite team wins or LeBron wins, or LeBron loses and my favorite team wins. So anyway, Minnesota dominated this series 4-1. This was a beatdown. And I think if you told me before the series started that the series would end on a 27-24 Rudy Gobert game would be the reason that we won, I would have called you crazy. Minnesota, Anthony Edwards was not good on the scoring side in Game 5 here. However, the entire series, the Lakers were throwing to at him, and he proved to be what a lot of people wanted him to jump to this season, which was the facilitator and being able to see the court like a true top 3 basketball player in the world. A lot of people in the offseason were like, yes, we see you can score, we see you can take over games, but we want to know that you can control the game, and we want to know that you can understand and read the court. And he did a great job of that in this series. I think J.J. Redick knew that they were going to have to, if they were going to win, it was going to be because Ant was making the mistakes while reading the court, not because he wasn't scoring. So they threw 2 at him, they didn't let him score, and he made the right reads time and time again. Rudy Gobert was almost unplayable in the first 4 games of the series. Like, he had 15 points total in the first 4 games. He was awful on the offensive side. And then in Game 5, J.J. Redick decided that Jackson Hayes wasn't going to play. And he realized, hey, I'm 7'2". Nobody on their court is taller than 6'9". I'm just going to throw my back into somebody and go get a rebound and put it up and go for some lobs. And it worked. They didn't have a center on the court, so use your center, take advantage. LeBron and Luka both had injuries in Game 5, which it really didn't affect the game that much. But Austin Reeves was terrible. He gave a quarter of good basketball. Other than that, he was awful. He's the reason why they lost this series. He couldn't hit shots. He couldn't find his rhythm. I think that if he plays his game, they win a couple more games. And I blame Austin Reeves personally. I think Luka and LeBron had good enough series. LeBron led the series in every single statistical category. And yeah, I think you have to do some real reevaluation if you're the Lakers here. Go find yourself a center. That is number 1 priority in the offseason. Go find a center who can play alongside Luka and LeBron.
See, this is the problem with LeBron fans. It's always somebody else's fault. But LeBron is 40 years old, and you can't play him for the entire game, the entire second half of a game. So I think the blame is on J.J. Redick for that, and then just not having Jackson Hayes out there at all in the last game when Rudy Gobert is putting up 24 rebounds on you guys. And they were completely demoralized by offensive rebounds the whole game by the Timberwolves. And then Luka's out there. He'll put up his points, but you can't – conditioning was bad for him.
Luka was gassed.
Yeah. And you can't – this is why I don't really like Luka. He's not just a bad defensive player. That would be one thing. He's, like, completely disinterested in playing defense at all. He's a cone. He just stands there. And half the time, like, there was, I think the last game, he missed a shot. He's crying to the ref. While he's crying to the ref, Ant is running down the court, scoring a basket, and he's still on the wrong side of the court. You're an NBA player. You're paid hundreds of millions of dollars, and you can't even act like you're a little bit interested in playing defense. Just run down the court, dude. So I don't think it's on LeBron because LeBron's 40 years old, as much as I like to put it on LeBron. But if you're a budding superstar, you were in the finals last year, you have to get your ass in gear for a first-round playoff matchup against the guy that's whooping your ass is 23 years old. Shout out to Julius Randle, though. He's getting his revenge on the Lakers. Glad to see that. But
no more playoff faller vibes from him. He played so well in the series.
Yeah, so the big things for me are the 2 reasons they lost. I mean, you can say Austin Reeves, but Austin Reeves is a third option. So you can't, if you're depending entirely on a third option to win you a series, then you shouldn't be in the series. The 2 biggest things for me are coaching and conditioning. Conditioning in the case of Luka and not playing LeBron like he's 23 years old, And then coaching, J.J. Redick, play your big man. He's the only big man you have, and you're getting demolished by a big man. And then don't get defensive about it when people ask you why you played LeBron for the entire second half. And be like, did you see that interview?
Like, you think I'm inexperienced? You think I don't talk to my assistant coaches about substitutions on every timeout?
Yeah, just stuff like that. Like, I don't know. Coaching and conditioning were the big reasons the Lakers lost, in my opinion.
Briefly, really quickly, going back to the Timberwolves, I think that the Timberwolves have a top 3 bench unit in the playoffs right now. I think that having the ability to have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid, and Dante DiVincenzo come off the bench and be a spark plug at any minute is one of the most valuable. It might be the most valuable 3 players, not being superstars in the entire playoffs right now. Those 3 guys. Naz Reid, I don't know if he continued his streak in Game 5. I didn't read the stats well enough. He hadn't missed a shot in the fourth quarter in the series. He was 9 for 9 heading into that game in the fourth quarter, and I think like 6 of them were threes. He is an absolute spark plug, and I pray that we can re-sign him because he is so valuable.
I have a hypothetical.
Okay.
Okay, so hypothetically, let's say next series the Timberwolves, which I think will happen, they'll play the Warriors and they beat the Warriors. And the Knicks play the Celtics, and they lose to the Celtics, which I think is going to happen. In that case, would you be confident enough to say that the Timberwolves definitely won the Cat trade? I mean, I know they couldn't pay him anyways, but
it depends on how Julius Randle plays. But in the short term, yes. I mean, if we go to the Western Conference Finals, yes, in the short term. If it's behind a Julius Randle 30-point game, definitely yes. Like it was 100%. It wouldn't surprise me if Julius Randle was not on this team next year, though. So I'm not sure. It's more of a long-term did we win because it depends on what the Knicks do in 3 years. And when in their last year with this core, have they done anything? Or what we do with Julius Randle if he's off the team next year, which now I don't think he will be because of his performance. If he has a big-time stinker in the second series, maybe. But, yeah, it's more of a long-term thing. I think if we go to the Western Conference Finals as of now, like you can say, yes, we were. And they lose, we can say, yes, we were the winners as of now.
All right, well, moving on to our final Western Conference matchup, which is still ongoing, but I think it's a foregone conclusion. We have the Warriors versus the Rockets, and they're fighting for a chance to take on the emerging Timberwolves. And, yeah, I like the Warriors. They're in a Game 6. I think they played tonight. But Jimmy Butler seems to be the key that unlocked a potential championship run. It's a very, very slight potential, but a championship run for the Warriors. And I think they get it done tonight and go to Minnesota and lose. But what are your thoughts?
I think they lose to Minnesota, but I'm in the same boat. I think Jimmy Butler has brought out a new life in this team. I think he and Steph and Dre work together very, very well. I think their leadership together on the court has been evident. And shout out to the Rockets for being a 2 seed. Shout out to the young team for making it this far. I think they're going to maybe try and make a splash this offseason and grab a Kevin Durant or grab a Giannis or something like that. Because I think they realize that without somebody like that, they're not going to make a run. And with somebody like that, they could. But going down 3-1 with an average age of like 24 years old, being a 2 seed, it's very difficult to come back from, especially tonight playing in Golden State. It's going to be a really, really hard. I mean, if they win both games, shout out to them. I don't think they beat the Timberwolves either way, if that gives you any inclination as to how we're feeling about the series going forward. But, yeah, Steph and Jimmy had an absolute stinker in Game 5. Neither of them played well. The Rockets actually struggled more with the bench unit because Steve Kerr sent out the bench unit with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. They struggled more with the bench unit than they did with the starters, so... And then once he put the starters back in, like, hey, we might have a chance. Or, like, he brought in some starter. I don't think Steph and Jimmy came back into the game. I don't remember. But then they blew him out again. So I shout out to the Rockets for making it this far, for being a 2 seed, but it's probably just not your year. We'll talk more about the NBA here in a little bit. I have a new segment. Actually switched it. But I have a new segment here at the end of here in about 20 minutes. We'll see. But now let's talk about the draft, my favorite event of the year. We talked a lot about it on the show before it happened. Now here we are just over a week late from the draft. And there were some interesting moves. There were some boring moves. There were some shocking slides, shocking risers. But what I want to talk about is the biggest winners and losers from the NFL draft so far. from all 7 rounds, including UDFA's, I think that this is probably a conversation that will change dramatically over the next 3 years. We'll say this team is a winner, but then we'll look 3 years from now and be like, wow, that draft actually sucked. It looked good, but it sucked, and vice versa. So I'll let you start with your first winner here.
All right, well, my first winner, I have the New York Football Giants. And a lot of people were like, why would you take Jackson Dart over Shadur when you traded back in? But that's the guy that Daboll feels most comfortable with, and a guy that's worked with Josh Allen. If he sees flashes of Josh Allen in a player and he thinks he can develop that, I think you trust Daboll. He's your head coach. So I like the Jackson Dart move. Unlike the Falcons, who gave up a first-round pick to trade back in, the Giants gave up a second and 2/3, which is not as bad, especially for next year. I mean, you're going to want to have your first-round pick next year. The draft's supposed to be a lot better. And then they were also able to grab Abdul Carter, who I think is going to be the best player in the draft with your original first-round pick. He's a blue-chip player, one of the only 3 blue-chip players in the draft, him, Travis, and then Ashton Jeanty. And, yeah, he's instant impact on their defense, who already has a pretty good pass rush, so it's just going to be scary hours for the NFC East.
Yeah, I think the Giants were one of my winners from our post a couple of days ago, and I got some hate from it, just from people saying they gave up too much to move up into the end of the first to grab Dart, but I think you give up anything if it means you get your franchise quarterback in your eyes. My first winner that I have is we're going to stay in division, and I'm going to go with the Cowboys. A lot of people didn't like their first-round pick, including us at first. I think a guard at 12, especially that guard at 12, was a bit of a stretch. You addressed a position of need, a position of somebody who just retired, a Pro Bowler, All-Pro who just retired, and you address a position of need at 12. And I can't argue with that. It wasn't my favorite pick. It was probably like a C+ in terms of what it got draft night. However, the real damage that they did was on day 2, where they drafted Donovan Ezeraku, who we thought was an end-of-first guy for sure. If you would have told me he would have slipped out of the first round, I'd been like, oh, he's one of the first 3 picks of the second. But he ended up signing all the way to 44, I think, somewhere in that ballpark, which is crazy value for the Cowboys here, who are trying to replace, quote-unquote, Overshown? Yeah, Overshown, who tore his ACL, breakout edge rusher for them, who tore his ACL in the middle of the season. So now they have another threat coming off the edge with Micah Parsons, Overshown when he comes back, and now Ezeraku. They also drafted Savone Revel in the end of the third, or the beginning of the 3rd round, I think. And before his injury, he was seen as a top 20 pick. He tore his ACL at East Carolina almost before the season started. Like, it was right at the beginning of the college football season, so he'll be ready to go by the time the season starts. But he was a top 20 consensus. If he can get his speed back and he can get his agility and quickness back, he will be a impact player instantly. And I love that pick. And I also love the pick of Jaden Blue out of Texas, around 140, I want to say 130. They needed a running back. They grabbed Javonte Williams in the offseason. They still have Rico Dowdle, right? No, he went to the Panthers. Yeah. So Javonte Williams, and then now you bring in Jaden Blue, who was an impact player for Texas and has a lot of room to grow, but can be a really solid rotation running back for the Cowboys. So that was my first winner that I had.
Yeah, I also have the I don't have them on my list right now, but they were one of the teams I was considering. After the first round, I thought they were like a big loser, like typical Cowboys drafts are. But Ezeraku's a really good replacement. They lost DeMarcus Lawrence to the Seahawks in the offseason. And Savon Revel, he's not only a really good player, he's a really good character guy. The dude went to East Carolina and had to work in like an Amazon factory to pay for his tuition until East Carolina gave him a scholarship. And he's a really hard worker, and yeah, I really like the pick there. Moving on to my next team, this is one that I'm not happy about as a Steelers fan. We have the Baltimore Ravens, and in typical Baltimore Ravens fashion, they just stayed put and waited for teams to let the best players fall to them. And they ended up with the best safety in the draft and probably the best safety duo in the NFL right now, drafting Malachi Starks to team up with Kyle Hamilton, which is not good for whoever is the Steelers quarterback next year. And not only did they draft Malachi Starks, they also let Mike Green fall to them in the second round. A lot of people had him going all the way up at 15 to the Atlanta Falcons. And I know he's got character issues, but he's still a really good edge rusher, fits right into the Ravens culture. I mean, and yeah, they get basically 2 top 15 level talents in their first 2 rounds. I don't think you can get much better than that.
Yeah, Ravens were a big winner for me. I really loved what they did in the draft. My next winner was Travis Hunter. Now, there's two sides of this coin because there's the Jags and there's Travis Hunter because I think the Jags, we'll talk about the Jags here in a few minutes, but Travis Hunter goes to Jacksonville instead of Cleveland. Like, that's just what it is. Call a spade a spade. It was going to be Cleveland. They traded out. He goes to Jacksonville now where he just feels like a better fit. Now, the biggest side of this Travis Hunter winning is the quarterback situation. He goes from Kenny Pickett, not Deshaun Watson because he's out, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Shadur Sanders, or Dylan Gabriel to Trevor Lawrence, multiple-time Pro Bowler. Like, a lot of people will hate on Trevor Lawrence. I'm not a Trevor Lawrence hater. I think he's a good player. I think I think he needs a little more protection, but I think he is a much better quarterback than people give him credit for. I think that's why Travis Hunter's a big winner for me because he goes into a system where he can go in and be an impact wide receiver with an impact quarterback rather than being the focal point of the offense with no quarterback and just kind of hoping. And if you were to go to the Browns on defense, they already have two very, very solid corners with, honestly, two solid ones, one decent one with Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, and Denzel Ward, whereas the Jags have Tyson Campbell, and that's pretty much it at the corner position. So he can go in and play corner. He can do what he wants, play both sides of the ball, be an impact player on both. I think Jacksonville's a much better spot for him than the Cleveland Browns.
I agree that Travis Hunter is a winner, but the Jags are not. I'll get to that later as part of my losers list. But, yeah, I mean, Trevor Lawrence isn't a great quarterback. He's basically the white version of Dak Prescott, to be honest, with less playoff success. But he can get you the football, so I guess that's a plus. Kenny Pickett can't do that. He's got one playoff win.
How many does Dak have?
More than one.
It might be two.
Yeah, double. Let's see. Dak Prescott beat Tom Brady. He went to the NFC Championship game his rookie year.
Dak Prescott. The Cowboys haven't been to an NFC Championship since 1996.
Or the division round. He went to the division round his rookie year.
Keep talking.
I think they had a bye though.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it's that much more.
Well, okay. Nonetheless, so then they're the same. But yeah, I mean, 2 and 5 in the playoffs. That's better than Trevor Lawrence. Just about there. But yeah, I mean, I'll get to why I don't like it later. But yeah, Travis Hunter's in a good spot in a weak division to where he should be able to see his maximum level of success as a player. Oh, moving on to my second winner of the draft. Oh yeah, moving on to my third winner of the draft. This one's kind of a wild card sleeper, but I think it's a really good pick. The Seattle Seahawks. They addressed their biggest need in the first round by drafting a guard. I don't care if it was too high up, but if you sign a new quarterback to a $100 million deal, you want to protect him. And Gray Zabel is probably the best guard in the draft. He was the best guard available since the Cowboys already took Tyler Booker. But yeah, need fits there. In the second round, they landed the most athletically gifted safety prospect I think has ever been in the combine, and Nick Emanwari. And that dude is like downfield ball hawk. He's going to be good, I think. He's got a lot of potential, and it's a really good pick in the third round. A lot of people had him going all the way up. Some people had him going to like the Dolphins at 14. So it's a really good pick there. And then in the third round, which might turn out to be the best pick in the draft for them, in my opinion, they drafted Jalen Milroe, who he has struggles accuracy in intermediate and short passing game, but he's got tremendous upside with his legs and his frame. He's basically he's almost the same size as Cam Newton. He's a big dude, and he's really, really fast. And if Clint Kubiak can get the accuracy under control while he's sitting behind Sam Darnold for the next year or two, and then they bring him out in 2027 or 2028, he could be a really, really good sleeper pick, a really Jordan Love-esque pick, or Aaron Rodgers-esque pick, where you're sitting him behind the starter. And I feel like the Seahawks had a really, really good draft in a division that is really up there for anybody to take.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe is going to be a fantastic punt returner in 2 years. Just kidding. I don't have a real take on Jalen Milroe. He's such a wild card for me. But yeah, I really like what the Seahawks did. I really like Zabel. I really like Emanwari. Emanwari is one of my favorite prospects, and they already have a crazy secondary. They just improved it again. Legion of Boom 2.0.
Legion of
Boom. That was terrible. Anyway, my final winner. It's kind of a wild card as well. I didn't want to go 3 mainstream winners. I wanted to go for kind of a minor winner. And my minor winner is the Indianapolis Colts. I think for the entire draft process, everybody knew they wanted Tyler Warren. Every single person knew that's who they wanted. And there were mock drafts, and there was talk of them trading up as high as 5 to come get Tyler Warren because of how valuable he was as a prospect. And it just so happened that during the draft, he fell all the way to 14 and fell right into their laps. Colston Loveland was taken before him at 10, which was a shocker. But they got exactly who they wanted, somebody who they were interested in trading up to 5 to get. They got him at 14, didn't have to give up anything. I think that's a huge win for the Colts to get Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, a huge piece in their offense, just somebody who's a big target, catch the ball, great hands, great route runner, just a big safety blanket for either one of them. And then in the second round, they took JT Tuimoloau. I can never say that name. Former first overall prospect coming out of high school. Crazy upside. Came back for his senior year at Ohio State. Played very, very well as a freak athlete. I think he had multiple pick sixes off the edge at Ohio State. Just a freak athlete that you're able to get there in the second round. And I just like it's very Colts-esque. The Colts always go off of athlete score. Or relative athletic score, I think is what it stands for. They always go off of that at the combine. They always draft the freaks. Tyler Warren's a freak. JT Tuimoloau is a freak, and they got both of them without having to move around. So I really like what the Colts did.
Got to freak off in Indy. Yeah, I mean, it's a good draft. It's not a great draft, though.
I just think they're a winner for not having to move and getting exactly who they wanted.
Yeah, but Tyler Warren's still going to have somebody throw him the ball, which is going to be a struggle with Anthony Richardson.
Well, they drafted Riley Leonard, don't forget.
That's true. Anthony Richardson will get the ball to him about half of the time that he throws it to him, though, so that's good. I don't know too much about the DN, so I'm not going to comment there, but, I mean, Tyler Warren's a good pick at, I think, what were they, 14? At 14, so yeah, I like it. Moving on, we have the losers, and I'll start, if that's cool. My first loser is the New Orleans Saints. They reached a little bit in the first round. A lot of people had Kelvin Banks a little bit into the late teens on their draft boards. They took him at 9. I don't hate it because he's a tackle, but what I really hate is who the tackle is going to be protecting. With a top 40 pick, they decided they were going to take Tyler Shook, who is the second coming of Kenny Pickett with an injury history. The dude is 26 years old. He's been injured 3 times. He doesn't have his best season. He had 3,500 yards and 21 touchdowns, 10 picks. It wasn't good. And they took him at 40th overall when you still had, I know a lot of people didn't like Shador. Shador's better than him. Milroe is better than him. I know you don't like Milroe. Milroe's better than him. Dylan Gabriel's not better than him, I'm sorry. So that's why I have the Saints as my first loser.
My first loser is pretty obvious. My first loser is what a lot of people would say is the base loser of the draft. It's Shedeur Sanders in the Sanders family. Shedeur Sanders was at one point the favorite to be the second overall pick, and he slid all the way to 144 to the Cleveland Browns. It came out that his interviews were terrible. He was egotistical. Teams were scared that his dad Deion Sanders was going to be involved, going to be too heavily involved, and that they just didn't want to deal with all the drama that came along with Shedeur Sanders. Not only that, but he got drafted to the Browns, who already have Deshaun Watson, who just traded for Kenny Pickett, who just signed Joe Flacco, and who 50 picks earlier drafted Dylan Gabriel. So it doesn't make any sense for him. He's just in a terrible spot. He's the 5th quarterback in the room right now. For a team with a mid-offensive line and not great weapons, it was a terrible situation. He lost tens of millions of dollars by sliding that far, and Shedeur is the biggest loser of this entire draft.
Yeah, I agree. Without touching too much on the reasons why that he slid, I mean, I feel like it's mainly because he has a wide receiver attitude and a quarterback body, and when the quarterback ceiling is probably Geno Smith, you can't really get away with doing that. But nonetheless, he lost out on a bunch of money, but he did sell a bunch of Browns jerseys, so the Browns are probably pretty happy about that. But yeah, I agree. Shedeur Sanders was a loser for sure. Moving on to my first loser, and just to preface, I did all teams. Jack mixed in some players. So my second loser is Jack's Minnesota Vikings. I mean, I don't hate the pick. Donovan Jackson, that's his name, right? Donovan Jackson is a really good player. Played guard at Oregon. Then the injury happened to one of the tackles, or Ohio State, yeah. Played guard at Ohio State. Then injury to one of the tackles. They moved him out to tackle. Even though he knew it would potentially hurt his draft stock, he did it anyways. And, yeah, it paid off, I think. He landed in a really good spot with already a pretty good O-line. He's filling a need. I don't know how big of a need, but a need.
Big need.
Well, I think they should have taken a Malachi Starks or a Nick Emenwari, or traded back a couple picks, and they still could have got him there and acquired more draft capital. And then they only had 5 picks total in this draft, and they wasted their third-round pick on a wide receiver when they have the second-best wide receiver room in the NFL. It didn't make much sense to me, but he's probably more educated on the subject than me, so I'll let him defend his team a little bit.
Yeah, I think guard was a huge need. Guard was we struggled with the interior. We drafted Garrett Bradbury a few years ago, and we let him walk. We did sign a center and a guard in the offseason, which was the only reason why I was like, I don't get it. But now we have a full offensive line. We have, our entire offensive line is decent to good players when healthy. Obviously, Darisaw tore his ACL in week 9, so depending on how he comes back. But now we have Darisaw, Jackson, Fries, Kelly, and Brian O'Neill. And it's a really solid offensive line. I like that we filled it out. It's a big need, especially with a quarterback who now has a knee injury. For a young quarterback, it will be great. Ty Felton in the 3rd round out of Maryland was a freak at the combine, speedster. He's a slot guy. The Viking, if you watch Vikings football, our wide receiver 3 is used pretty heavily. That was evident with KJ Osborne the past couple of years. He had fantastic years. He had over 700 yards his 2 years as wide receiver 3 with us. I believe is 600 or 700 yards both seasons. Our wide receiver 3 is pretty heavily used, so I don't hate the pick. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think I would have rather had an interior defensive lineman or a corner, because our secondary is not great. But yeah, I don't think it was a great draft. We only had 5 picks. So we only had 4 picks originally, so we were going to be a loser to start from the jump. So I don't hate what we did. I don't love what we did, but that's my take on Vikings football right now. My second loser is Joe's team, is the Steelers. I think the Steelers whiffed on a lot of quarterback opportunities. Now they addressed the defensive line. They drafted a running back at 83, but based on your evaluations, it sounds like you would have been fine with Milroe or Sanders at 83, is how you've made it sound. And now the Steelers are going into the season with either Will Howard or Mason Rudolph. For a team that has real playoff aspirations, that has a real playoff offense in terms of young, talented offensive line, really, really solid weapons, young running back now, 2 young running backs. This is a team that has a decent potential to win 10 games. And you kind of squander it. I know that not necessarily Milroe Schutter is ready to lead that, but is Mason Rudolph, do you trust him enough to be the guy that you're not willing to take a swing on somebody at 83? 21 would have been a stretch for either one, but even Dart at 21 would have been fine, I think. Or Schutter at 21 would have been fine at the time, but especially not at 83, not taking a swing, I feel like is a miss. Drafting Caleb Johnson, I really like Caleb Johnson, so that's why the Steelers themselves aren't a loser. It's just the Steelers quarterback room. Yeah, that's kind of where I stand on the Steelers.
I got something to say about that. This is a plan. Omar Khan plays chess. He doesn't play checkers, okay? There's a deal in place with Aaron Rodgers. He's going to get signed. He's going to play a year or 2 for us. And if he's there, we do not need to have a total wide receiver diva as the backup quarterback in the locker room. Shadur Sanders might be the worst option as a backup quarterback in NFL history, because he thinks in his mind he's a top 3 NFL quarterback. He thinks he's up there with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and more power to him. If you're a starting quarterback, you should. But if you're a backup quarterback to who will be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, in the top 10 for sure, you don't want that guy stepping on people's toes. And Jalen Milroe is not ready to start. So you either have Jalen Milroe and waste a pick on him, or not waste, but a pick that's not going to be used to win a Super Bowl. Or you get Aaron Rodgers, who you think still has a little bit left in him, could possibly take you on a playoff run. You get weapons for him. You get Caleb Johnson. You beef up the defensive line. You get Derek Harmon, who's one of the only 5 300-pound players that have run a sub-5 40-yard dash. He's an absolute animal. I like what they did. You have a much better quarterback draft next year in Pittsburgh. So Aaron Rodgers, if it doesn't go well, you're going to have a good pick. Or you could trade up. You could get a guy. Probably not going to get Arch, but you could get maybe Nico Iamaleava. You could get Carson Beck. I hope not. Garrett Nussmeier. You can get a quarterback next year in a better quarterback class who could actually be a starter and is not going to be a cancer to the locker room. So I like what the Steelers did personally.
So it's all contingent on if Aaron Rodgers signs. If he doesn't sign, are you willing to say that this is a whiff?
No. If he doesn't sign, then we will hopefully have a top 5 pick next year in a much better quarterback draft. And it'll be our first losing season in 20 years in one of the best quarterback drafts ever. And if you draft Shadur at 83, he's going to want to be the main guy. Even if he has a Colorado season and wins 4 games, he's still going to think he's the guy. You're going to have to get rid of him when you bring in a new guy, so it's a wasted pick either way. So that's my thoughts on it. I think it's a win-win either way. None of these guys are going to be starters outside of Cam Ward. Are going to be good starters outside of Cam Ward, in my opinion. Maybe Shadur will prove me wrong. Jackson, no. Moving on to my final loser. This is the one I'm most passionate about. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the biggest loser in the entire NFL draft. So, their biggest need was defensive tackle, I think. They have a lot of needs. You know what their biggest need was not? Yeah. So last year you drafted, in my opinion, the best rookie receiver in the class. He had more yards than Malik Neighbors, more touchdowns than Malik Neighbors, with a slightly better quarterback than Malik Neighbors. But you traded a first-round pick next year to move up to 2 and draft what is at best going to be a number 2 wide receiver. It doesn't make any sense for me. He's not going to be able to play every snap both sides. If you split him up, then he's going to be a Eli Apple-esque safe or corner. It doesn't make sense. You gave up a full draft pick when you're probably going to have a high draft pick next year because you guys are dog ass for a number 2 wide receiver. You don't give up that kind of capital for a guy that's not a quarterback. It doesn't make any sense at all. Unless you're just trying to sell jerseys, sell hype. But that doesn't win football games, and it was a terrible move. And I'm definitely raw about it because they gave a team in my division 2 first-round picks next year. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think this is one of 2 options. Either they traded that because they feel like they're getting 2 players, an offensive player and a defensive player, which is a popular take, or they're trying to sell hype, like you said. They want a jersey, and they want to move to London. It's one of those where they're like, all right, we're going to lose, we're going to sell jerseys, and then we're going to jump ship to London. But my final loser is the Atlanta Falcons. Now, they definitely won with their Jalen Walker pick. After that pick, I was like, they won the draft. Like, they won the first round, A+. And then they moved a future first and a second to grab James Pierce Jr., a guy who has been labeled uncoachable. Now, could he be a Pro Bowl edge rusher, 10 sacks a year, like that kind of guy? Absolutely. But if he's not, you gave up a first-round pick and a second-round pick to move to the end of the first round to grab a guy that literally has been deemed uncoachable by NFL coaches. Now, if he went to a guy like Dan Campbell or a guy like Mike Tomlin who can handle strong personalities, I like the pick. But Raheem Morris, I don't know much about him in terms of his ability to handle guys like that. So I didn't like how much they gave up for a guy who's been labeled uncoachable. It's as simple as that. I think that he's a great, great talent with not a great head on his shoulders as it stands right now. So if he can improve, this grade will change immediately. But if he can, he's going to have to get better mentally, and he's going to have to really perform in order to make it worth this first overall pick that you give up.
See, I look at this a little differently. I see this as they are just basically picking early, right? They're basically taking their first round pick next year. They're just taking it now. And if it's a question of, do you think next year you're going to be able to pick a better player at your position in the draft than James Pierce Jr.? And I think the Falcons are going to win their division this year. I think Penix is going to take a step forward, and I think they're going to be drafting in the 20s. If you're drafting in the 20s, I don't think a James Pierce Jr. level guy is going to be there if you think James Pierce Jr. has the first overall potential that he had this time last year. Okay? I think it's a really good move. I know you had to give up a second rounder on top of it, but I mean, I would give that up for a guy that has the upside to be a first overall pick in a potential draft, according to all the scouts from last season. So I think it's a good pick, personally, and I think the Falcons are going to be big winners. But I think the Falcons are going to be a lot better this year, and I think that kind of segues us into our next segment.
Yeah, our next segment that we're going to talk about is which team has the biggest potential to go 0 to hero, not necessarily worse in their division, but to be the biggest risers from last season. We saw a lot of bad teams last year. Which teams have the best chance to make the jump? And I'll start with one of those teams because one of the teams that we talked about is the Atlanta Falcons, segueing perfectly. The Atlanta Falcons last year struggled early with Kirk Cousins, and when they put Penix in, they kind of turned the season around a little bit. They had a couple wins in a row. They ended up finishing 8-9, 9-8, missing the playoffs, but you address your defense in the offseason this year in the draft. You bring in 3 edge rushers in Jalen Walker, who can play off ball, James Pierce, and they also brought in Leonard Floyd, who is a perennial 8.5 to 10 sack guy. They also brought in 2 safeties in the draft. They brought in Xavier Watts, who has the potential to be a very, very good safety. And they brought in, I think his last name is Bowman, Brandon Bowman or something like that from Oklahoma, who is also or Bolden maybe, a very good safety for them. So I think the Falcons have a chance to win 11, 12 games this season and take the NFC South from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I agree, which is why I don't think they're losing the draft personally. But now that I look at it, I noticed that we have 2 teams in common. So I'm going to go to the team we don't have in common, and I'm going to put out the New England Patriots. I have a lot of optimism about their quarterback. I didn't at first when he first got drafted, but seeing his talents from college translate into the NFL last year, even though they had a bad record, he still looked pretty good. And they brought in a experienced coach who's been to an AFC Championship game in Tennessee, in Mike Vrabel. And he fits the culture perfectly. He was a player in New England. He's a hard-nosed guy. You bring in Will Campbell in the first round to protect your guy, or your Drake May. And you sign a certified number 1 receiver, even though he's getting a little old. He's still a really good receiver in Stephon Diggs. He's vowed that he's not going to be as big of a diva as he was in everywhere else. Except for he wasn't a big diva in Houston. I think Houston humbled him a little bit after the injury. And I think that in a division where you have the Jets, who are the Jets, the Dolphins, who are 1 sack away from Quinn Ewers starting the entire season, and then you got the Patriots, they have a really clear path to be the runner-up in the division, coming from the worst team in the division last year. And I think they could realistically get up around the 500 mark, whereas last year they were at 4-13. So I think they could double their win total from next year, and that's why I have them as one of the winners on my list.
Yeah, my hot take from last year, which I got a lot of flack for, was that Drake May would be the best quarterback from the class. Now, Jaden Daniels has made me look a little silly so far, but I still think he has the chance to be a very good receiver, or a very good quarterback, especially given that they are now going out of their way to protect him at all costs, which I really like. We actually have 2 teams in common now that I'm looking at it. I thought you said we had 1. So I'll talk about one of them really quick. I think the one that we really both believe in the most is the Bears. The Bears, another year of Caleb Williams, they absolutely set up a wall in front of him on the offensive line. They brought in 3 different interior offensive linemen and a tackle who should be very, very impactful. They drafted Caleb Williams, a tight end. This offense is going to be deadly next year. This offense is going to be extremely well schemed up with Ben Johnson now at the helm. And it wouldn't surprise me if this team averaged 26 points a game next year at least. They're going to score a lot of points. Now, can the defense keep up? I'm not sure, but this offense is going to vault them to at least 8 wins. They won 5 games last year, I think. This team has the potential to win as many as 11, in my opinion. I think Ben Johnson's going to be fantastic. Another year of Caleb Williams, crazy protection, crazy weapons. I love this team, even though as a Vikings fan, I'm not looking forward to it. I think they have a fantastic potential to be a 9, 10, 11, even 12-win team if it all goes their way.
Yeah, a lot of people gave the Bears flack for drafting Colson Loveland over Tyler Warren, but based on scouting reports, it looks like Colson Loveland is a better receiving threat than Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren's still a good receiver threat, but Colson Loveland's better. And in the broadcast of his college games, they were calling him the second coming of Brock Bowers, which I don't know if I'd go that far, but he could be the key to unlocking or the final ribbon, basically, on the Ben Johnson offense. In Detroit, you had Sam Laporta, right? And you bring in Colson Loveland. You have DJ Moore, and who's the other receiver there right now that they didn't draft? And Roma Dunze, who you got last year. You bring in Luther Burden from the second round, which was a steal. A lot of people had him graded as a first-round talent. So Caleb Williams really has no excuse anymore. He's got every weapon he needs. He's got a no-line. All the pressure is going to be on Caleb Williams to see if he's worthy of the number 1 overall pick that he was taken at last season. So we'll see how that goes. I think Caleb Williams has a lot of talent. And the only thing that could hold them back is the defense and the division they're in, because their division is probably the top 3 most stacked in the NFL. Moving on to another really stacked division for another one that we share is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this team last year had Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew playing quarterback, and Desmond Ridder. And Brock Bowers was still the best tight end in the NFL as a rookie. This year, you trade for Geno Smith, who is a top 15 quarterback right now in the league. You draft Ashton Jeanty, who is a top 3 running back prospect this century. and you bring in Pete Carroll, who is a head coach that's been in 2 Super Bowls, won one, has experience crafting a Super Bowl winning team. And I see no reason why this 4-win team from last year cannot double their win total and get up to 8. They are in a tough division. I think it's going to be kind of a toss-up. This could be the year that the Chiefs finally lose the division, whether it's to the Broncos, the Chargers, or even the Raiders. But I have a lot of faith that Pete Carroll's going to turn them around, and I look for the Geno Smith and Brock Bowers combo to put up some numbers this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much exactly what I had in mind. I honestly don't have much to add to that. I think the Raiders are going to be much improved this year. Adding a quarterback like Geno Smith is adding 3 wins to this team at least. So I have a lot of faith in the Raiders as well. I think the division is going to beat each other. The Raiders might not have the best record because they have to play the best division 6 times, but I think this team is going to be much improved.
Out of all the teams we listed, which one do you think has the potential to? Because they're all worse than they weren't. The Falcons weren't. The Falcons weren't. Which team do you think has the best going worst to first? If we're leaving the Falcons out, so Bears, Patriots, Raiders, which one do you think could go worst to first if you were betting on it?
I'm not betting against Mahomes, and I'm not betting against Josh Allen, but I will bet against Jared Goff. I think the Bears have the best chance to jump. I think the Vikings are going to have – the Vikings will not go 14-3 this year. I think we'll probably go 9-8 or something like that. The Bears will jump us. I think the Packers could go 10-6. I think it could be like a 9-8, 10-6, 10-6. Bears just so happen to win a bunch of divisional games and go 11-5 or 11-6, whatever. You know it.
Yeah, my prediction is that the NFC North has 3 teams make the playoffs this season. Yeah. So, with that being said, let's move on to our final segment. It's a new segment brought to you by Jack.
Yeah, so today we're going to be Today we're going to be doing a new segment called Playing the Odds, is what it's called. And I'm just going to ask you a question, and you are going to give me the odds of this happening. And we're just going to do it for the 2 conferences in the NBA playoffs right now. And I want you to, obviously, out of 100, I want you to give me the percentage that you think each team has to come out of the West. So, as of now, the Nuggets and Clippers are tied. So you can include each of them, or you can pick one of them that you think is going to win. Same with the Warriors. Warriors are probably going to win. They were up 3-1. It's 3-2 right now. But of the Warriors, Thunder, Timberwolves, and then the Lakers or Clippers, or the Nuggets or Clippers, whoever you decide, what are the odds that each of them come out of the West?
All right, go one at a time and list them out for me.
Oklahoma City.
50% for Oklahoma City. It would be higher if they're more experienced, but they are a young team, so I think that leaves some vulnerability open for them.
All right, how about the Minnesota Timberwolves?
40%.
Wow.
I don't see a world where the Timberwolves lose their second-round matchup, whether it's against the Rockets, which I don't think it will be, or the Warriors. I think the Warriors are good, but I don't think they're going to be able to match up with – I think Rudy Gobert would honestly have a field day against them too. I don't think they have the size. I know Jimmy. I'm excited to see Jimmy Butler versus Ant, but I think the Warriors, or I think I would take Timberwolves in 6 for that series. So I say 40%.
Okay, how about the Warriors, who are up 3-2 right now on the Rockets?
3%. I think they would have. I don't think that they have the gas to get there. To be honest, I feel like you're gonna have some wonky games from Steph and Jimmy, like we did in Game 5, and you're not gonna be able to have those games against. If you get past the Timberwolves, you're not going to be able to have those games against the juggernaut that's the Thunder, so I don't see them making it. Their cap, to me, is the Western Conference Finals.
And finally, either the Clippers or the Nuggets. We can lump them into the same.
7. I'll give them the remainder of the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the experience can help them overcome the Thunder, and they have a little bit cleaner path, I think, to than the Timberwolves because they have Zubac. I think it's going to be the Clippers, not the Nuggets. But you have either Zubac or you have Jokic, if Jokic is able to get through. So, yeah, I think they have a higher chance than the Warriors, too.
Sounds like it's down to the Thunder and the Timberwolves. And we can go ahead and ask, who would you take in that series?
Ant-Man, Batman, Superman, Wolves in 5.
I'll take it. Timberwolves to the NBA Finals, according to Joe Felix. Now let's move over to the East side. What would you give the Cleveland Cavaliers to make it out of the East?
See, this is tricky because there's a lot that can happen. I would give the Cavs a 20 out of 100. Well, out of 100, a 30% chance to make it. I feel like it's going to be a bigger challenge than people will think to get over the Pacers because the Pacers are still a good team. But I think if something goes wrong in the Knicks series and let's say Kristaps or Tatum get hurt, there is an easier path that the Cavs could foreseeably get to the finals if they're facing an injured Celtics team. So that's why I give them 30%.
So what about the Cavs' opponents in the second round, the Indiana Pacers?
2%. If they're able to get past the Cavs, they're not going to get past the Celtics, even with an injury, I don't think. If they do, it'll be back-to-back years with the same result, probably a gentleman's sweep in the Eastern Conference Finals. But, yeah, that's about the cap.
All right, what about the juggernaut you've mentioned multiple times? What about the Celtics?
50% chance.
Okay.
I think they're the most complete team in basketball when you factor in experience because they've been there. They won last year. And I think they have 2 superstars and a really, really good big. They got Derek White, who's basically a superstar, let's be real. And, yeah, I really like the team. I think if I was betting right now, I'd bet on the Celtics to go back-to-back.
So that leaves us with the Knicks, and by math, that means you give them a 17% chance to make it out of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, maybe that math is a little off. No, they are playing pretty good. They did look bad against the Pistons in a couple games, but they do have everything they would need. They do have a higher chance to win than that's about right, actually. They have a higher chance to win than the Pacers, less than the Cavs, but it's still relatively close to the Cavs. If Cat has a really good game where he drains like 9 threes, they could win. Yeah, I like that.
So, with that being said, I assume you have the Celtics over the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, barring some crazy injury. Yeah, if Tatum, Brown, and Kristaps are all relatively healthy, then I would say Cavs in 6. Or Celtics in 6. And if it's Celtics versus Wolves in the finals, Celtics in 5.
I knew you were going to say that. Well, let us know what your NBA playoff predictions are for the rest of the playoffs here. And if you get it right, Joe will give you a big kiss. So thank you so much for listening to the 3rd episode of Stadium Status. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook. Everywhere you'll find us, you'll find some great content, whether they're graphics, short form, long form. We love to see the follows. We love to see the likes. We love to see the comments. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.